It's time. Bring on the PvP tier list. Let's go. Hey folks, welcome back. My name is Zeals for all you new folks out there, and if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification. Today, I start by giving a massive shout out to Rich, the newest member of the Patreon family. Thank you so much for your massive support. With that said, we will continue on from the current state of the endgame PvP video by dropping the 2019 Fall Edition endgame PvP tier list, and in between, I will be announcing the 3 winners of the channel giveaway. Now, for those of you guys who have missed the last video, I made a 2-sentence long summary on Reddit, which I'll show you guys right now, and I'll be talking about that again in today's video. Now, this video will not go too in-depth because I don't want to spend 30 minutes to an hour restating or providing evidence for every single little thing, which I already have in my previous videos. Everything I said in the past 2 weeks, I will briefly summarize and go over while talking about the heroes' placements. Most of you guys by now don't need evidence and just hear from my opinion, so I'll give it to you guys straight and quick. For those of you guys that are new and never saw my previous videos, what I do is try out all sorts of lineups on tons of accounts, and everything in my list is after I have thoroughly tried it extensively on multiple accounts and servers. I don't mean to toot my own horn, but trying things out and telling you guys about it is just part of my job, and it's what I am passionate about. So while all the other lists may not have personally tried the heroes at max potential, I have. So one more time folks, this is the end game PvP tier list. An early game hero tier list will be released later this week as well, so stay tuned for that. Now, since the last tier list, a lot has happened to the game. There are 4 big game changers to keep in mind that explains the reason for majority of the heroes' placements. First, enables skills updates, the unbending will change and purify being added in. 2, Amun-Ra being added to the glorious relic shop, increasing her accessibility. 3, Guston being added into the game. And of course, number 4, hero reworks. So those 4 big game changers will affect every decision, so don't forget to keep them in your mind. Like for example, Amun-Ra will be in majority of endgame PvP comps due to the second reason, her accessibility now. So starting from the god tier, what do you guys think? Of course, it's gonna be Ada as well as Amun-Ra. That's not a surprise. Now, while there are big counters to both Amun-Ra and Ada, they are still staple part of an endgame PvP team. They work well in multiples or even as singles. Ada brings the debuffs, balance mark, and healing reduction. Most of her damage bypasses Amun-Ra's Guardian Shadow shields. I'm just gonna call it shields from now on. And overall, very consistent and sturdy hero. She is no longer a must-bring hero since Guston and Purify can remove her debuffs, but the constant pressure by debuffing and her last passive damage is nothing to laugh at all. Amun-Ra is a must-bring hero. She alone disables so many heroes that rely on their active attacks for their damage. Not only does her shields ignore the active attack nukes, but turns them into massive healing. By adding her to your team, you lower the chance of being randomly bursted down by active attacks. I can talk so much about her, but every hero we talk about today will be tied with Amun-Ra's effect on the meta, and that is why, ladies and gents, we are in the passive skills meta. Boom! Next on up, we have Horus. He is a very consistent damage dealer. Crowd controls Amun-Ra's shields, doesn't stop this monster. Ada's healing reduction can stop Horus from healing back up with his counter attacks, but with Guston and Purify enabled skill, he can be kept healthy for a long time. The longer this freak beast is alive, the more pressure he will give out. His active attack eats 2 layers of Amun-Ra's shields, while his last passive, the counter attacks, will ignore Amun-Ra's shields and just deal damage right through them. Next on up, we got tier 0.5, where these heroes can swing between god tier and tier 1. We got Guston up at tier 0.5. I've tried him at E5 on a dozen or so accounts, and he has provided solid support. His removal of CCs and debuffs are just nasty along with Purify. His totem removing Ada's healing reduction debuff allows healing to be viable once again. And with Horus and Amun-Ra in your team, you can create a nice sustained, mid-round, rounds 5 to 7 team. What I mean by that is that you keep your Horus alive in any way, shape, or form with Guston as well as Amun-Ra, and by him being alive, he gains stacks with your allies doing their active attacks. He gains his buffs, and it's pretty much going to tilt the fight in your favor if it already hasn't by then. So Amun-Ra tries to prevent the massive active attack nukes while Gustin works hard to remove healing reduction debuffs from the enemies Ada or Adis, allowing a nice return for Belrain and Ormus to heal through the passive skills damage getting through Amon-Ra's Guardian Shadow Shields. I also tried double E5 Gustins and it was pretty fun to say the least. More on that later. Oberon, he is at 0.5 because alone he is a tier 1, but in 3 to 4 he belongs at God tier. Like all other heroes and teams though, he does have a counter, the Mim Cheese. Now, I want to take a little break to talk about what is the best aura right now. And right now, the best aura is a no aura. And that is because Gustin being introduced into the game as well as Horus's rework. Now, tier 1, we got Asmodel. He is falling because his active attack is becoming near ineffective. However, he can still apply crit marks by being hit or doing his attacks even while Amon-Ra has her shields up. The king of slot 1 is no longer Asmodel though. It belongs to Horus because Horus counter attacks will be always going through Amon-Ra's shields, while Asmodel's crit marks, someone needs to pop them in the short window where Amon-Ra's shields are down. Mim is back due to Unbending Will change. He also does consistent damage through his last passive. Mim cheeses can keep Oberon armies in check as well. Woo, next on up we got Penny, and at the last minute I bumped her back up to tier 1. She can be tier 1.5, but at endgame if you build her with Gustin, Amon-Ra, and Horus, you will have enough heroes doing their actives before Penny, clearing away Amon-Ra's shields before Penny does her active. As long as you can reliably do this, Penny can wreak havoc while staying alive with Gustin and Amon-Ra's support. Let's take a closer look right now at how to do Penny right. Next up, we got Belrain at 1.5. As said previously, healing is back if you got Amon-Ra and Gustin. Dark Arthur though is a hit or miss and therefore is inconsistent. CC right now isn't all that scary with Purify and Gustin. With Unbending Will change, she is a lot squishier. Her actives every round, it sounds great on paper, but not always a good thing as Balance Mark just kills her off, or she just heals the entire enemy team when Amon-Ra shields are up. No passive skill damage in her toolkit as well. Aspen is in the same boat as DA. Aspen's active can shave off 2 layers of Amon-Ra shields, but there are heroes like Horus that can do that and still do tons of damage with passive skill damage, which Aspen lacks. Ormus is a great fortress hero right now, and with healing creeping back into the meta, his rescue mark helps so much against passive skill damage in sustained comps as previously mentioned. Cruz is a good hero, don't get me wrong, but not Gustin good. Gustin has smart heals, while Cruz is random heals. Gustin heals are based on totem being laid down, and at the end of the round, while Cruz has to get off his basic attacks. Stun isn't a huge threat with Gustin and Purify in the game, and the weaken debuff, while still decent for passive skill damage, with actives being ignored anyways with Amon-Ra's shields, it's not as effective. Actually, doing bigger actives when your opponents have Guardian Shadow means bigger heals to your opponents. Nakia does solid passive skill damage with her bleeds, speed reduction is another debuff, and piling debuffs on your opponents is a good thing with Gustin and Purify being in the game. Majority of Valkyrie's damage comes from her damage over time, her dots, and she is decent at removing Amon-Ra's shields. Fateblade and Jara both have great actives and have conditions that fuel their active attacks to be more powerful. But at the end of the day, in today's meta, actives are a gamble. And the thing about Fateblade and Jara's active attacks, they do have CC tied into it, so while they may not do damage, if there is a Guardian Shadow up, they can still at least CC, do something. King Barton's rework has brought up his counterattack damage, but it's still not enough. Horus being the king of slot 1 is another reason as well. Valentino has really fallen down. So many fights I see small numbers now with Amon-Ra being in the game, and while Overload is a passive skill damage, it's just not enough pressure, even with the monsters being reworked and the fixed attack and all of that stuff. Because you pretty much need to build Valentino for speed, and if you want to build a damage Valentino, there's just way better options for damage dealers. To remind you guys again, with new guild tech, Purify and Gustin, CC isn't really all that scary or consistent. If you haven't noticed it by now, consistency in either doing damage or locking opponents down or doing both is what makes heroes high up on the tier list. Tier 2.5, we got Omnivore, who is just really hurting right now. Squishy, and while active attack peels 2 layers of Amon-Ra's shields, it hits only 2 targets. It's just too slow of a pace. Aiden still got that nice on-death passive damage for the Cheese team is now being back with the Unbending Will change. Emily works well in Cheese teams with their utility, and Sia is troubled by Amon-Ra, and Sia liking the slot 1 spotlight where Horus, King Barton, and Asmodel are all better options at endgame is bumping her down. Yes, her shadows are considered passive skill damage, but keeping her alive and doing more than 1 active is where the trouble lies. Hate to say it, but Michelle, I used to love this girl. She is in a sad state right now. Her CC chance is low, heal is okay, and crit buff is meh since active attacks are having issues right now and passive skill damage doesn't crit. Dasmo doesn't do a lot of damage and just lacks modern stats like CC immunity or damage reduction. Yes, Dasmo can shine in the later rounds, but the problem is getting there. Flame Strike suffers from relying on active attacks, just like Scary. Cthulhu, even with this rework, is still poop as the cap is still too small, and the biggest reason why is that he turns the best source of damage in this game, passive skill damage, into an active attack. We don't want that. Leave passive skill damage alone when Amon-Ra is pretty much king of the jungle. Or the queen of the jungle. Demon Hunter, Starlight, Vesa all belong down here. Demon Hunter's silence can go off before Amon-Ra is active in round 1. But nowadays, not having a Guardian Shadow in round 1 isn't a big deal, especially if you're running a sustain Gustin Amon-Ra combo. Starlight relies solely on active attack to do her damage and also requires a snowball effect, and Vesa doesn't have a smart heal to the group like Gustin or Ormus's active attacks, and of course Ormus's rescue mark. The rest are down here due to all the reasons above, with the fact that there's competition now and that there are just better heroes above them in their respective factions. Alright, ladies and gents, this is going to wrap up the PvP endgame tier list. If you made it till the end, make sure you comment down below. Smash that like if you want to see the PvE tier list. I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm out for now. Peace.